And joining us now is Major Johnny Polous from the Mississippi Highway Patrol. Major, good to see you in the studio.
Good to see you, Gerard. It's great to be back in the SuperTalk Studio.
Yes, sir. So you were reassigned, shall we say, to this 1034 project, something that I think you and I were talking about before you assumed this role. And it was just a general question I had. I think we were discussing a rundown of activity over a busy weekend and talking about some crashes that the troopers were working. And I just asked a question, when they come up on this and they see these horrific scenes, you can't unsee that. You can't just forget about it, and just general concern about how do they just get through that and continue to function and thrive, knowing it's probably going to happen again, honestly.
That's correct. And I think that conversation that we had involved a lot of insight on your part, knowing what law enforcement agencies, are subjected to every day with the men and women that go out and serve the public.
Yeah.
And I can tell you firsthand now, we've invested in this program. Next month will be 2 years from the time we started. And in today's society, you have to invest in your officers. You have to invest in their well-being, and not only the officers, but their families as well. And that is the goal of the 1034 project.
So was this something that was started elsewhere and it's kind of permeating nationally? Is that how this is working?
Yes, and there are many agencies across the country that have had wellness programs in place a long time. It's very complicated. The biggest hurdle that we have is there's a stigma associated with mental wellness. When you talk about mental wellness with a law enforcement officer, especially the older generation, and I'm one of those, the way I was raised and everything, that's something that you're just not comfortable in talking to. But because let's face it, we're law enforcement officers. We have to suck it up. We have to deal with those things on a daily basis. So it's the subject itself is tough to bring up to law enforcement officers, but I can tell you what I have seen in the past with the support of Commissioner Tindall and Colonel Ginn. We're making great strides.
Okay.
And we have to continue on that path, again, for the future of law enforcement.
So is this changing, Major, how we train individuals to become state troopers? Is this becoming ingrained as part of the curricula?
Yes. And with that being said, after today, I'm going to meet with Captain Reed Harrington. He is the MHP training director to establish a schedule in our upcoming in-service training that, we train the troopers yearly. And also we have implemented the wellness program and training into our MHP trooper training class to get to them early for them to understand that, again, we're going to equip you with everything you're going to need to be a law enforcement officer as far as equipment, learning how to drive a vehicle, learning how to shoot, but we're also going to equip you mentally on how to handle the things you're going to be subjected to throughout your career to where you can lead a meaningful and productive life.
Yeah, makes total sense. So you've got support, obviously, of leadership in the way of the commissioner and the colonel. Has there been any pushback, Major, in the ranks?
A little bit, but that was expected. Again, it goes back to the stigma. But I can tell you a lot of our success, we base that on when we actually intervene. And we have a peer support team that consists of officers. That was the first thing that I felt was necessary based off of chiefs and sheriffs and state leaders across the country. You have to have a peer support team in place.
Okay.
So we have 75 currently under DPS that are trained in peer support.
Okay.
And basically what peer support is to help officers navigate, through critical incidents or any personal issues they might be experiencing in their life. So for the success part of it, when you have a law enforcement officer that's pretty hard, doesn't really want to talk, but when we do have those conversations and they realize the resources that we can provide. And, hey, a lot of us have been there and done that.
Yeah.
And when you've been there and done that, you can provide some type of guidance on what to do and what not to do. And when you hear the stories or you get the calls from these officers saying, hey, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you. I appreciate what my fellow officer did. I appreciate what the agency did for my family. That's when you know you're being successful.
Okay. How much, if any, Major, of this training and just the I guess the therapy and the assistance, how much of that has been lifted from the military? Is there a lot of similarities?
So
there?
we've had to learn a lot from the military when it comes to PTSD.
Okay.
And keep in mind, we have a lot of military personnel that are sworn law enforcement officers. So they're taking those experiences overseas. If they were in combat, they still have that. And then you put on top of that being a law enforcement officer and what you're subjected to on a daily basis. So to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
It's a different type of mindset. I've had military professionals tell me we train, when you're going through boot camp, you're training for, they might be one time in your military career you're subjected to battle.
Makes sense.
Daily battle.
Constant. So, of course, we were deeply saddened at the news of this tragic accident with Trooper Mike Griffin, Sergeant Griffin. And so I just wondered, would the Highway Patrol provide, or through this program, provide any sort of support to his family?
It's already in place.
Okay.
The colonel and the commissioner made numerous phone calls right after that happened. And keep in mind, we had a situation with the SWAT call out in Grenada. So it's been a tough weekend. But once those calls go out and we're made aware of these type of incidents, the peer support team is automatically activated, and we have them all over the state. And in talking about Mike, this is one of the things that puts it right dead in the middle of the radar screen of how important these programs are, because you had a gentleman that took an oath in 1987 and was a Marine to serve and protect. And here he is doing exactly what he swore to do that day in trying to render aid, and he lost his life. And there were a lot of officers out there that we have to get to. We have to sit down and we have to talk, because even though you're a law enforcement officer, we're still human. And you're subjected to some pretty traumatic things. And when you see a fellow officer that has lost their life, and let's just say it, in the line of duty, that is very traumatic in itself. And again, that's when you see the buy-in, when these officers and their families see, hey, look, we care. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, is just show that you care. And again, that is one of the major components of the 1034, is to have that peer support where fellow officers come in and they sit down and we try to help them navigate through these tough times.
Gotcha. So when you have an incident like this, especially an incredibly tragic one with Sergeant Griffin, how does that change the troopers, just the community? I mean, is there something kind of immediate in the wake of that just, I don't know, changes their just attitude at that point?
So as far as from a law enforcement perspective, the first thing that hits you is the reality. Yeah. That's how fast it can happen. His role that day was to, again, render assistance, to help someone. And he lost his life in trying to do that. For a law enforcement officer, we block things out. We try not to focus on certain things. But when you have those types of situations, again, it brings the reality into play. What we do as far as the communities, and this is another part of the wellness program, that we want to do a better job with community relations. We have to do a better job with community relations. Our job as law enforcement officers is to better the perception of law enforcement, right? But we have to have the perception of society. We have to help these officers have a better perception of society to go out and do what they need to do again, to be that law enforcement officer serving and protecting, but again, for the officer to live a meaningful and productive life.
Makes sense. So before you go here, final question is, would you categorize it as a success, what's happened so far?
Absolutely. If you help one.
Sure.
If you help one, you've been successful. And I can tell you we've helped a lot more than just one.
I'm sure. Well, I believe you're perfect for this role, Major. And
I appreciate that, Gerard.
I really appreciate you stepping up and applaud the Colonel and the Commissioner for making that change. It's
Absolutely.
desperately needed within our ranks, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it some more.
Yes,
Always
sir.
good to see you, Major.
Same here, sir.
Thank you, sir. We're coming right back with more in the Element Wealth Studio.